Welcome, everybody. Thank you so much for coming this evening and shifting over to a Zoom. And I trust you're all dug out and you're doing well and enjoying the snow. I just love the snow, so I've been appreciating it since I can stay at home and be snug. So I'm Nancy Hazard. I'm with Green and Greenfield, and we're the organizer of this event. And I have a few things to say about logistics and about Green and Greenfield, etc., before we move forward. So I will be your MC, and you're all muted. Thank you so much. And as you heard, we are recording this talk, and after the talk, there will be Q&A, and we will be recording that as well. And we'll be explaining to you how to go about asking questions. But we'll be we'll be asking questions for you to raise your hand, as if we're not going to be drawing questions from the chat box. So you don't need to put questions in there at this point. So I'm going to say a little bit about Green and Greenfield and about the theme of our series of talks this year. And then I'm going to hand the mic over to Dorothea, who's going to introduce our speaker, Didi Pershouse. So Green and Greenfield's an all-volunteer group, and we were founded almost 20 years ago with the goal of working with our community to make Greenfield more sustainable and resilient. And sustainability, as many of you probably know, is defined as the place where social justice, environmental quality, and economic vitality overlap. As such, we work on many different issues, and most recently, we've been working on restoring our climate and biodiversity, on housing, youth, and collective learning. And I encourage you, if many of you are not familiar with Green and Greenfield, I encourage you to Google Green and Greenfield after this talk and learn a little bit more about us. And we have a beautiful, recently updated website. So I'd also like to to introduce some of the folks that we who are working with Green and Greenfield.
Nancy, your microphone is fairly quiet. I don't know if you
Oh,
have a way of getting a little closer or
I don't know. Does that help?
it's better, yeah.
Okay, that's interesting. So I'd like to
Thank
introduce.
you, Didi. I'm having a hard time hearing too.
Say that once more.
Oh, it's fine. She was just saying she was having a hard time hearing too, but I think you're better.
Oh, am I better? Okay. So I want to introduce uh, Dorothy Sotiris, Mary Westervelt, and Elizabeth Erickson, who are on the screen here, who have been working with Green and Greenfield on this and other nature and pollinator programs. And I'd like to thank Susan Wargaftic, who's offering technical assistance tonight, and she's our intrepid Housing Greenfield co-chair. So, in these turbulent times, the health of our planet is often, I feel it's often pushed aside to the back. And so I'm thrilled to see so many people of you who are here today who haven't forgotten the importance of the health of our planet. After all, if we don't have a planet, nothing else matters. Our theme this year for our winter talks is water and our climate. And we have 3 speakers lined up, and we hope that you'll come to all 3. Tonight, Didi's going to be focusing on the big picture. In February, our speaker will be addressing the question, what can we learn from beavers? And our final speaker will inspire us to bring what we have learned into action and what we can do in our yards and our communities to make a difference. So Dorothea, please carry on and introduce Didi.
Thank you. So I'm very happy to be introducing Didi Pershouse. She is a well-known environmental educator who lives just north of us in central Vermont. She educates people all over the world about how plant roots and soil life foster the soil sponge to protect against both flooding and drought. I have learned so much from her about the essential underground workforce that fuels everything. She has a background in alternative health, and she's the author of The Ecology of Care, a book that draws parallels between the human microbiome and the soil microbiome, and talks about ways to build healthy communities both above ground and in the soil. She also wrote Understanding Soil Health and Watershed Function. It's a teaching manual that's used in over 100 countries. She leads deeply participatory workshops with the Land and Leadership Initiative. She co-founded Rehydrate California with Australian soil scientist Walter Yene, and you can find her on the Wisdom Underground on Substack. She serves on the Planning Commission for her town and as a Vermont Conservation Commissioner, and she has worked with Greenfield's own regenerative design group on healthy soils. I am excited to hear her thoughts about creating ways to build soil health and climate resiliency in our community. Welcome, Didi.
Thank you so much. And I'm sorry I can't be with you all in person. I hope I can come down for another event this winter, but it does give us a chance to have a wider audience and get to know other folks around the world, and also have them get to know your region, or our region really, because I would say this is both the Pioneer Valley and as well as the whole Connecticut River Valley, which is the corridor that we're all of you and I live on. So um, and I thought we might start just by getting a little bit grounded in place by folks who do live first in the Pioneer Valley, which is um, the region just south of me in Massachusetts, to talk a little bit about just a few examples, either in the chat or out loud, of what you are seeing in terms of flooding, drought, heat waves, issues around that. I don't know that you've seen any fire yet, but fire is certainly all around us in this area as of last year. And just to kind of get a little bit more of a sense of what's going on locally with regard to this, so that we can connect it in to the topic. Anybody want to speak to that? Okay, let's see. We got some things happening in the chat here. Summer drought, often after very wet springs, dry summers. Kate O'Connor, yeah, jump in.
Hi.
Hi.
I'm showing a map of Greenfield's watershed.
Awesome. Here, let me pin you. Let's see. There we go. And what have you seen there?
So what I see there is that this is from the USDA Forest Service, and this is their Forest of Faucets reports, which gives reports on the health of the watersheds all over the United States. And this is Greenfield, and the gray areas are at 73%. I don't know if you can see the legend on the side.
Yeah.
So right in the middle where Greenfield is, it's well below. It's well below.
73% in terms
Uh,
of usual rainfall, or
ability to produce clean water, which is that's the standard that they use, is how well are your watersheds working to be
okay.
able to produce clean water, both quantity and quality. And
Interesting. Okay.
and I'll show you a bigger map.
Yeah,
that
you should be able to share your screen if you wanted to. There we go. Yeah.
So here's a bigger map. I think, well, to share screen, I'd have to.
Oh, yeah, that's okay. This will work fine. Yeah, thank you. So this is where I was talking about. This is for those who are not in our region. This is the Connecticut River that coming down here that divides Vermont and New Hampshire. And I am right about here, and Greenfield, if I'm got it right, is sort of in the center over here.
Yeah, so this is showing that in our region, the only places that are at 100%, this is the map of 100% ability to produce clean water. And this is showing that skills the forever wild forests of the Catskills, the forever wild forests of the Adirondacks, and some of the national forests of lower Vermont and upper New Hampshire are the only places
Mhm.
in this region of New England that have 100% ability to produce clean water because those are the preserved forests. And the only ones that really have long-term protection are in New York with the forever wild forests. There's very few really truly protected forests anywhere in New England. And this is its impact on our watersheds.
Yes, and I did pin Kate, so you might be looking at a different view. Someone in the chat, Peg, was asking me to pin her. She is pinned, so if you're not seeing her pinned, look at your view because you might be in the gallery view or in a multi-speaker view.
I was saying that any of us could pin her.
Oh, okay. Sorry. Yeah, I should have been spotlighting her. Here, hang on. Let me just do that. Sorry, I used the wrong control there. So yes, okay, go ahead, Kate. So what Kate was showing was that here we have the Catskills, we have the Adirondacks. Sorry, it's going a little blurry here, back and forth. This is Vermont, this is northern New Hampshire, and these are the places that are actually providing 100% of the clean water needs. So, thank you very much.
Right. Just about, yeah, that's so that I've been looking into what the impact of logging policies in New England and deforestation is doing to our water, because it's not something that very many people are talking about, that the
Absolutely.
forests are directly responsible for providing our clean water.
Yeah, and that is it's true in so many more ways than just through the soil as well. So one of the things we may have time to talk about tonight and may not, but we'll see how far we get, is that when you have healthy, diverse forests, they're actually populating clouds biologically and populating rain, but through nuclei, biological nuclei that actually can attract enough water to make a cloud and attract even more water to have it fall down out of the sky as rain or snow. So without forests, that ability goes away, and also the ability to create enough of basically a vacuum to bring in moist air from other areas, particularly from the coast. So forests are really important for a number of reasons. And I will say the piece of information that has shocked me the most, almost, I mean, there's a lot of shocking things these days, but in terms of the environment recently, is that forests on the east coast of the US and other places are being clear cut, sent overseas, shipped overseas to turn into wood pellets to burn at very high temperatures to smelt or melt the precious metals that are used to make solar panels. And the people who are doing that, cutting those forests and selling those forests off, are getting sustainable fuels climate credits for doing that. And when I mean, even in carbon accounting, I'm not sure that it makes sense. It certainly doesn't make sense when you're looking at the whole picture of what we call the living climate. And when you look at the water cycle and the cooling capability of forests through transpiration, and the ability of forests to create clouds and rain, and also to hold water on the land. So that was one of the things I was going to mention later, but here we are talking about forests already. So I'm going to go back to the chat for a minute because there was quite a lot in there. So summer drought, dry summers, damaging floods on farmland. 2023 flooding was a wake-up call, says Helen. It's windier, not as much snow. Spring went dry, farms flooded out of business. in Springfield, high humidity, drought, dry summers, high snowpack today, much wind. Drop in the water table here in, not sure if that's Western Australia or Washington State, but and let's see, just looking in terms of the original question. Yes, okay. So, and then we're seeing forest fires just north of us in Quebec and south of us in New Jersey. And I guess you had some in Massachusetts last summer. I'm not remembering where those were, but that's kind of shocking, but also not surprising. We do have a lot of wood to burn in some places. So, and when in Vermont, I just learned was the highest drought, like across of the whole country last fall, which we don't think of Vermont as being dry at all. So what's going on? And how can we help this? Some of it is prevention and some of it is regeneration. And what does a little tiny soil stuff have to do with it? So I am going to share my screen. Hang on 1 second. Okay. Here we go. Get that into a slideshow. Move the controls. There we go. Okay, that should do it. So the question is, all the things that we just talked about, what does this have to do with it? And what is this thing on our screen? This is a photograph from my colleague Phil Lee at Regenerate Earth in Australia, another colleague who works really closely with Walter Jena. And he's been doing these photographs with his microscope. And what we're looking at here is a close-up of the soil sponge. You see the little broken down rocks or pieces of sand, silt, and clay, and they're kind of shiny in part due to moisture, but in part due to the biological slimes and glues that hold them together into soil aggregates. And then you see these little threads, which are mycorrhizal hyphae. So like the little threads that are they're in the fungal family, but these are fungi that come directly out of plant roots and out into the soil and extend the plant root to search for nutrients and hidden water in the soil, because they can get water that's like on these little soil particles that the plant roots wouldn't be able to access, because it's kind of water films. And they also work on breaking down the minerals, the sand, silt, and clay, little tiny rocks in here, to get nutrients to the plant just in the right amount and timing, and can travel really far to go find them, much farther than the plant can. So they're tying things together like little threads. The plant roots are also helping hold this thing together into a intact sponge. And really, really critical here is this nothingness in between things. This space, this sacred space, these cathedrals underground, these voids, as Walter calls them, is where a lot of stuff happens here, because there is life underground. And what does life need? Almost all life needs oxygen. So this gives air for life underground. And I think all life needs water. And this is where the water can be held in the soil. It also provides space for plant roots to explore, space for all kinds of soil life to travel and move through, and space that becomes kind of like an insulating layer on the ground, so things don't freeze or get too hot too quickly. So it's like a big blanket of insulation. And the soil sponge structure can go down really deep. In prairie soils or grassland soils, this could be 10, 12, 14 feet deep, soaking up water. providing all of that good space for things to happen. And there are, when we talk about it as a sponge, if you think about a kitchen sponge, what makes a sponge a sponge? So two things. One is it has these spaces, right? That it can soak up water. It has pore spaces. But the other thing is it doesn't fall apart when it's wet. Like if every time you put your kitchen sponge in the sink, it fell apart, it would not be a sponge, right? Or if it didn't soak up any water, it wouldn't be a sponge. So, the term that we use, soil sponge, it's not a scientific term. It's the scientific term would be more soil structure, but it's really the structure and function that we're talking about here. Okay, so this is one that many of you have seen me do. And I recommend doing this at your next dinner party. Get a plate of flour, and this is very much like soil that does not have that spongy structure, that does not have aggregate stability or aggregates forming, those little clumps forming. It's just the broken down rocks. And when soil is mistreated, this is what happens to it. It just becomes like flour on a plate. And if we were to pick this up and put it outside on a windy day, it would blow away. And that is exactly what happens to soils in windy places that don't have this aggregate structure or don't have this soil sponge structure that has formed. But also what happens when it rains. So what you can do at your dinner party is to grab a cup and a toothpick, or you can use a little filter of some sort, or all kinds of things will work for this, and pour a little water into it to simulate rainfall. And what is happening here? So when we don't have a soil sponge, we get runoff, we get erosion, we get mudslides, we get flooding, because all of that water is running off of the top. It is not soaking in. And if we were to move this surface water aside, you would see that nothing has gone down there, right? So it's completely dry underneath. And that is what happens in soils that are like this. Also, if you put this out in the sun, this is going to dry up and form a crust. So then the next time that it rains, it's going to be even harder for that water to soak in. And meanwhile, what's going on in the streams and rivers and lakes is that a lot of the soil has run off and is clouding the water. And you'll see that in rivers. You'll see that the brown or colored water after a rainstorm. You don't see that in places like the Adirondacks and the Catskills, because those places, the soils stay pretty intact and the streams tend to run clear even after rain. And if there's anything being used on the surface here, nitrogen fertilizers or pesticides, or there's maybe a gasoline spills or whatever, or even manure, that's all going down into the river because it doesn't have a chance to soak in. So, but it doesn't have to be like this. What do we need to do to turn flour into bread? We add biology, and the biology in the case of flour and bread helps to create that structure, the pore spaces and the stability of the structure, the kind of glues between things. And the same is true underground. It's different biology, but it's the biology that creates the sponge. Humans cannot make the sponge. What happens when it rains here? Something completely and utterly different. So here it is soaking in. It is not running off. It's not eroding. There's no landslides. The river, when it gets to the river, you will see it's going to run clear and clean. It's actually going through a huge filter here. It's like a big carbon filter. It's a big biological filter. It is remineralizing that water to make it beautiful, drinkable spring water. We have now put 4 or 5 times as much water on here as we did on the other plate, which only took like 1.5 pours. And now you're starting to see that spring water moving down. And look, this is only like 1.5 inches tall, and good healthy soil, like I said, could be at least a foot deep, if not 12 feet deep. But here it's starting to reach the, the rock layer underneath or wherever. So it's moving sideways, but it's moving sideways and it's clean and clear. And now it's filling up. It's going to be filling up the ponds and the lakes and the streams and the rivers from below, from the side. This is like spring-fed lakes, spring-fed ponds, etc. So, and it's refilling the groundwater and refilling your well, and it's going to be delicious water. So, but also what's going on here is that the plant roots have tons of water there, right where they need it, and it is protected from evaporation. It is not crusted over, so the next time it rains, these surface pores are still nice and open. And if you put this plate out into the wind, it's not going to blow away either. It has all kinds of structural stability. One other thing that we didn't talk about is that here, let's go back to this picture. So over here, if the plants that are not getting enough water are going to be drying out, right? So that's when we talk about drought, we're talking about plants, but also forests having drought kind of conditions. Means they dry out and they're more likely to get diseased, or more likely to die. And so you end up having a lot of dead plant matter here. And as that dead plant matter stands or falls on the ground, it doesn't have enough moisture here to decompose it, right? Because this doesn't usually look like this. It usually looks like this. It's dry. So you're not going to get the fungal communities. You're not going to get the mycorrhizae, but you're also not going to get the decomposing fungi. And so those are the ones that form mushrooms. So you're going to have all of that wood and leaves and branches and blades of whatever plants are growing. They're not decomposing. And so you have a much higher fire risk. And we'll talk later about that you also are going to get higher air temperatures, because without water at the root zones, the plants can't transpire, and transpiration or plant sweating is how the air gets cooled. One of the major ways that we cool air, not we, but that biology cools the air. So we will get to that later. Okay, just a couple more pictures, because that was bread and flour, but here it is in reality. This is a healthy soil sponge, and this is more like the flour. And over here, you'll see that these are like little screens with a clump of soil put in them. The water's already in the tube. You can do this in a latte cup or a ball jar or something like that. You don't need fancy tubes like this. This photo is from the NRCS. And here you have all of those slimes and glues that are holding the aggregates together and also coating the aggregates. So what do we know about biological slimes and glues? They are very water resistant, right? So if you have egg on your plate and you try to wash it off 10 hours later, it's very hard to wash off. If you blow your nose in a handkerchief and throw it on your clothes pile and don't do anything with it for a week and try to wash it, it's very hard to wash off. So those slimes are very water resistant. And so they will keep things intact, and the rivers will look nice and clean and clear when it rains, rather than like this. Over here, you don't have the biology, the aggregates aren't holding together, and the water gets filled with soil. So that's that sponge thing, right? So you have the structural integrity, but you also have the water holding capacity. Here is another example. So this is from a conservation district, like we were talking about. Oh, and I just wanted to say in the intro, I used to be a conservation commissioner that is a town function. I'm now a conservation district supervisor, which is those watershed governance bodies that I was talking about. So this is from a conservation district in Tennessee, photo by Benton James. But these are, you can borrow these or have someone come and do one of these rainfall simulators if you're having an outdoor event. And what this one's done particularly nicely, they've lined them up in a good order here is why I like this photo. These are like big cookie cutters, and they've taken an intact piece of soil from a farm, these 5 different samples. They have a little screen on the bottom so that it doesn't just fall out the other side. And then this jar is capturing the water that is going into the soil. And these front jars are capturing the water that's running off. And there's a shower head that goes back and forth and back and forth and back and forth and rains on everything. And you get to see what happens. So this one, nothing has soaked in. Nothing has infiltrated. This jar is empty. It has all run off, and it has taken a lot of the soil with it. You can see how this soil is much more prone to erosion and really is not infiltrating at all, even though there's nothing blocking it, right? You'd think, oh, well, over here, there's stuff blocking the water, but no, it just doesn't go in. And if you if you flip this pan over after this demonstration, a big cloud of dust will come up from the bottom. And the people who run these things call that the oh shit moment, because the farmers standing around who have been told that you need to till the soil to open it up and make it fluffy for the rain, see this and realize no water has gone in. And one of the major things going on with this sample is that this has been heavily tilled. So it's been heavily tilled. It's been a monoculture crop. So only one thing growing at a time. And a lot of nitrogen fertilizer, which breaks down those aggregates. So breaks down the sponge. No plant roots in the ground, so left bare. No plant litter left on the surface, so again, left bare in a different way. Both of these are provide food for different parts of the soil food web. And so this is the result. Now, as we go to the left here, we've got more and more of the soil health principles that are being used. And you can see that less is running off, and then more and more is soaking in. And over here, it's all soaking in, nothing's running off, and it's clean and clear. It's like that last picture where you could just drink this water. This is the Catskill streams, right? This is the water that lucky New Yorkers get to drink because New York was smart enough long ago to conserve the forests that provide their water. So you can do the same thing just looking at the different house plants in your house, right? When you water them, some of them act like this and some of them act like this. What's interesting here is actually there's a little bit less water here than here. And it's not because of runoff, because not much of anything ran off here. The reason this one is a little lower, I suspect, is because this sponge is really holding the water in its pores. So it's not just running through, it's actually holding it there. And you know that when you have some of those house plants you pick up after you water them, and they're really heavy. They're like really know how to hold on to that water. So that's a healthy system there. Now, what's really interesting about this picture is that all 5 of these are from the same farm, same soil type, just different ways of managing. So different, here monoculture, here not a monoculture. Here, over here, they start leaving plant litter on the surface, less tillage, less nitrogen fertilizers, less pesticides, etc. So, because what we often hear is that the rate of infiltration, the rate at which water soaks in, is dependent on the soil texture, or the ratio of sand, silt, and clay particles, different size and shaped mineral particles. And that is true. That is definitely one of the things that influences this, but it is not determinate. So, okay, I am going to just check and see that I'm feeling like there was a door left open here, and this is not a good night to have a door left open. So I will be right back. No door left open, just a chilly draft from somewhere. Okay. Let's see. There we go. So what happened is that in the regions that we're talking about and that many of us live in, about 150 years ago, there were lots of forests and they were all cut during the sheep craze. So this is a log drive on a river near me, and you can just see that these hillsides are bare and all the trees are here getting driven down the river and sold, and to make way for grazing on the hillsides. And what happened is that a lot of that healthy soil then, just like we saw in those last few pictures, the next time it rained, it slid down the hillside. So now we have some very fertile valleys along the rivers, but also a lot of that soil went out into the Atlantic Ocean ultimately. A lot of the soil. So we have some fertile valleys along the rivers, and that's not just from this event. That was true, for floodplain agriculture's been going on for a long time. But we have very, very, very thin soils on the hillsides. So now the trouble is, though, that we have kind of beat up the soil that's in the valleys. So the infiltration rate along the Connecticut River, where I have tested it when I was doing work with the Soil Carbon Coalition, you can have soils that it takes an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours for an inch of rain to soak in on a flat agricultural field along the Connecticut River. That means none of that, basically none of that rain is soaking in if it takes that long for an inch of rain to soak in. So we cut the forests that were on the hillside, so we lost a lot of that soil and a lot of that capacity to hold water upland, and then we beat up the soils along the river with agriculture in general. Even older style agriculture, heavy tillage, etc., is hard on soils, but more conventional modern agriculture is even harder. So what do we do to grow a deep soil sponge? So we got to protect that soil surface and keep it covered with living plants, because those living plants actually feed the biological workforce underground that creates that soil sponge. And at least we have to protect it with mulch or hay, or but leaving the dead plants, etc. So leaving your leaves in the garden and in the woods. Don't rake them up. Don't get rid of them. Don't even mow them down, even though that's kind of fun and nice, but that's not good for the other soil life that likes to live in the leaf litter. Plant low growing plants and cover crops between rows if you're doing farming and gardening. No till, no dig gardening and farming. If you have to till, do it right before the next planting. So don't leave it bare and tilled. It's really a bad combination. Minimizing driving over soils, especially in muddy times, using the lightest possible equipment, balancing your loads. There's a whole science of that in farm machinery. Keeping animals moving and allow for recovery, so not having animals standing in one spot for a long time. Letting your plants grow taller and longer, so maximizing that green growth, that photosynthesis to feed the underground workforce. So a lot of people chop down their perennials as soon as they've bloomed. Don't do that. Leave those leaves. Let them do their thing. You can practice raise the blade or no mow May or no mow June or no mow July, August, September, October. So minimize mowing and also keep the height high if you are doing that. Allow for a diversity of plants and roots to feed a diversity of underground workers. So don't weed your lawn, definitely don't be using the like dandelion killers and weed killers and glyphosate, etc. Try practicing something called chaos gardening or meadowing, where you're really encouraging diversity, not just one row of this and one row of that, but where it all gets to grow together. That's more of the way that it happens in a natural system. Try to have at least 16 species and 4 functional families in diverse cropping. Magical things happen in the soil when you have that much diversity. There's a experiment called the Jena experiment, not related to Walter Jena, but in Germany. Christine Jones has some great presentations about that. And it really makes a difference to have that kind of diversity. Avoiding chemical fertilizers and pesticides. The fertilizers, as I said, really break down the aggregates, break down that soil sponge structure. Even just growing like pure soybeans, which are very high nitrogen crops, are hard on the aggregates. So a bushel of corn, typically you lose a bushel of soil for every bushel of corn grown. A bushel of soybeans, you lose 1.5 bushels of soil. So really hard. Start to learn with me and others how to think about a watershed as a whole system, and then start to plan for that whole system. So this is 2 very small examples: planting across the slope, minimizing roads and paths in the woods, plan them with water flows in mind, but there's so much more to it. Those are just 2 little examples. Feeding the soil biology with compost, grass clippings, grazing in place, so the manure and urine, etc. Biostimulants. Some people are very fond of something called Forterra. I think maybe Philip, that's your friend. Neptune's Harvest is a product that's made out of fish parts down in Massachusetts. So there's the sort of natural food that happens through the plants that are growing there, but we can also, in a typical natural system, we would have had a lot more animals and insects moving through and pooping and peeing on that soil. So we need to find ways to reproduce that. We used to have passenger pigeons that would darken the sky for days moving across, or bats, etc. Don't have that. Remember that grazing animals is not just limited to cows and sheep and goats. So insects are grazing animals as well, and they are practicing very much like grazing animals in terms of they're eating and pooping, bringing those nutrients into a new form that's easy for the plants to take up, even as long as they don't eat too many plants. And that's true whoever's grazing, whether it's an insect or an elk or a moose or whoever. Okay, there are some other things we can do that are not so much directly about the soil sponge itself, but that help to create the conditions for more water to be captured that then also allows the sponge to develop. Because if you don't have enough water slowed down in the landscape, there often isn't enough water for the plants to grow that can feed the workforce that can grow the sponge. And the fancy name for this is low-tech process-based restoration. I like names like gully stuffing, which Brock Dolman and Kate at the Occidental Arts and Ecology Center have some great, I'll put some things in the chat during the break, but they have great directions on how to do this. This is work that would be very, very appropriate to be happening in our region. I know where I live, I basically live in the gully with a very deep incised stream running right along our road. And there are mini gullies flowing into that big gully that if we were to slowly work on them would make a big difference in terms of flood resilience in our area. So this is a really great way also to get neighbors involved in thinking about water. We'll talk more about that in a minute, by doing a project together. But make sure that you actually think about the water before you do the project. Because I've seen some, let's say like check dam building I was doing out in Kansas. And people they were really interested to get out and try doing like human beavering. But they were cutting very healthy trees in the middle of the meadow. Just stuff in here rather than finding ones that were already a little, not so healthy or already dead. So got to be able to think about the whole system. This is a photo by or from Mikhail Kravchuk, who wrote The New Water Paradigm and has done tremendous work, especially in Eastern Europe, but also around the world in helping to do what beavers would have done and slowing these streams down so that more water is held uphill in the landscape and it can slowly soak in and capture the silt and nutrients uphill. And then that gradually helps to create conditions for the soil sponge across the landscape. Bio for Climate's got a great class going right now based on the work of Bill Zedek. There's a movie, a documentary about Bill Zedek's work called Thinking Like Water, and I will give you the link for that in a little while too. But he also has several manuals that have been published. And this is all kinds of things of, putting branches into a stream at certain angles and slowing things down and making one layer rock dams, and all kinds of ideas that people are doing all around the world. Particularly to restore streams where, these aren't very good pictures of the incised thing, but where every time the water comes through, there's bare soil, in this plane. And so it's like cutting into the stream in ways that are not useful, and gradually drops the whole water table, because as the stream gets cut lower and lower in the ground, the water is running at a lower rate, at a lower level. So it's not refilling groundwater above that stream bed. So if the stream bed is 20 feet down, like it is in the gully next to me, that's where the water is when it rains.
I can't see your screen.
Oh, were you seeing it before?
Only at the beginning.
Did you change the view that you're looking at?
Am I the only one having the problem?
Anybody else having trouble seeing my screen?
I can see it.
I see
Okay,
it
Ellen.
fine.
Yeah, Ellen, try going up. Usually in the upper right-hand corner of your screen, it would say view, and it should say, like, what is it? What do people have theirs on? Speaker and slides, or on
Speaker.
speaker?
I have it
Side
up.
by side multi-speaker.
Okay, maybe that would work too. I wonder if there's somebody who's good at tech, maybe they could chat directly with Ellen until she can sort that out. Ellen, are you having any luck?
I am not. I have it on speaker, then I tried multi-speaker. Thanks for taking time out. I didn't realize I was the only one.
You might try just dropping off for a minute and coming right back on and see if it resets itself, because it sounds like something got changed in there.
You mean close Zoom?
Yeah, what kind of a computer are you on? Or are you on a phone?
I'm on a Mac computer.
Okay. I'm not, so I can't help directly with that. But very often if you drop off of the call and come right back on, so just leave the Zoom and then come back on.
Or at the
Oh.
top, at the top of the bar, there's also, you can select meeting, in which case you don't see the screen, or you can select your name, Didi. At the top bar.
There we
Okay.
go.
Oh, yay. Thank you.
That one worked. Thank you for taking
What
time.
was it? The meeting, the show meeting? Is that what it was?
Name in the middle.
Right, when you choose meeting, it's not showing the screen. But if
Okay.
you choose you,
Got it.
because you're the speaker, It will show your screen.
Okay.
Hot dog.
All
Thank you.
right. Thank you. Takes a community. Okay. Thanks everyone for being patient while we sorted that out. We want to bring everyone along. Okay. This is a slide from Abe Collins and the Land Care Cooperative. Alvina's working with them. There may be some other folks here, other farmers who are working with Abe. He has designed a type of a rip sower, which is a piece of equipment that can actually plant seeds and put biostimulants, et cetera, all at the same time. And this is when you're dealing with extreme compaction in these, especially like grazing fields where you have mixes of perennials and annuals. And instead of plowing and turning everything over, it cuts a line, it's just a thin line, and then puts in deep-rooted plants like daikon radish and chicory and things like that, that will help to break up the layer of compaction, and then also puts in some biostimulants and nutrients and diverse seeds in there. So it also, although I heard someone the other day who said it pulled up some rocks that were so big that now he can't plow the field, but it's as long as your rocks are of a reasonable size. It is called the Vermont rip sower because it can deal with rocks more than many of these rip sowers. That they'll kind of reset and move around rather than just get jammed up when it runs into rocks. And we are a rocky place up here in Vermont. So then there's some other things, and this is more the work that I have been doing with folks is encouraging people to walk the watershed from ridge to river, both after a flood, like this brother of a friend of mine is doing after Irene, or just like after a gentle rain or during a rain. And noticing what's happening. Where's the soil eroding? Where is it running off? Where is it going to? This is, oh, sorry, I was meant to go to this one. Here on this ball field, you can see that it seems like it's kind of soaking in here and not over here. What's going on? Go back and, when it's not raining, dig some things up, check out what's going on with plant roots, what's growing on the surface, what's not growing. You can also see the grass is a really different color here. So you can see there's been some construction going on. That's probably part of what's happening. But it's kind of like a mystery novel that you sort out what's happening and then what's needed. That exercise of taking walks in the rain is one of, and the bread and flour demonstration that I did at the beginning are two of the lessons in this teacher's manual that's now being used all over the world called Understanding Soil Health and Watershed Function. This was my transition work from being a holistic healthcare provider, having spent 9 years writing about both agriculture and healthcare and how they need to shift from a sort of sterile kill off everything that doesn't fit model into a more holistic view and holistic approach to becoming healthy. So this is something that you can download for free can't see my own screen here very well, but at landandleadership.org. And if you go up to the top where it says learn, there's something that says soil health manual, and that will bring you to a Google form. And it's about 140 pages with 12 or 13 different exercises appropriate for all ages. So it is aligned with middle and high school science standards, and not just science, but also math and history, et cetera. But I use it all the time with adults. And as Dorothea said, it's being used in over 100 countries, including with the big project in Andhra Pradesh, India, with over 1 million farmers right now doing natural farming. So, so that is a nice thing to check out. And there's another newer iteration of this coming at some point. The UN is supposed to be publishing it, but it is very delayed. So shortly, I will probably just take it back into my own hands and publish it myself. So, Uh, okay. There's other exercises from that, but that also that you can do is doing water infiltration testing. And this is what I was talking about, like that this could take 12 seconds for an inch of water to soak in, or it could take 4 or 5 hours. You know, it's a huge range. And that has everything to do with flooding, with drought, with all of the other things we were just talking about. Also testing for just looking, there's something called a visual soil assessment test that has a bunch of different tests you can do with very, very simple tools. Really fun to get together a group of neighbors and do that. Here, I think he is working on a bulk density test, which is like how compacted is the soil. And that's a simple test. You get out a known volume of soil in a can and dry it and weigh it. And there's a little simple math to figure that out. And if your soil is getting less and less dense, that means the soil sponge is growing. Just like if the water is soaking in faster and faster from year to year, the soil sponge is growing. Doing mapping and learning how to set up a transect is really helpful in terms of being able to monitor in the same spot over and over again, or generally the same spot. So these are from some land listener trainings at farmer retreats that I have led. This is taking soil samples at different depths. That is my son, Alden. Here he's measuring for soil carbon. There's another picture of the same kind of thing going on. And then also looking for signs of life in the soil. You can do this with kindergartners with this little hoop. These guys are writing down how many different kinds of plants are they seeing on the surface here. And that's a great exercise of like, is this leaf the same as this leaf or not? It's bigger, but is it the same shape or whatever? What do we think? I mean, you don't have to be exact, but you can get a pretty good idea of how much diversity there is simply by seeing how many different leaf shapes are there in this defined area. And that has a lot to do with whether or not the water is going to soak in. You can also take, you know, with kindergartners, you don't need to do an infiltration test. You can use the cup method like I did with the bread and flour. Just give them some Dixie cups with holes poked in the bottom and a jug of water, and they can go around and, you know, if they pour the water over here, something different is going to happen than here, and something different is going to happen over here. Just getting people to think about whether water is soaking in and what difference it makes. All different ways of doing that. Okay, I'm going to stop here for a minute because this is sort of shifting to the living climate part of things, and I want to check in on time and also if there were questions about the sponge before we move into the other part. Maybe not in-depth questions, but just like clarifying questions if there was something that you didn't understand.
Yeah, if you have a question, if you could raise your
Your Zoom hand, Kate. Yeah.
what's it called? You go down to the bottom here where it
Down
says,
at the bottom it says raise hand. You might have to look under some other. Sometimes it's
I think you
hidden
have
under
in
reactions.
Macintosh, you have to look underneath the word react.
Yeah, and on your phone usually. Kate and then Janaki.
So I have a soil question for my own. I'm a homesteader.
Mhm.
And I find that even though I have a lot of, I have very high organic material in my soils because I've done good organic practices for years, and yet what's underneath all of it is gravel.
Mhm.
So that it's still not retaining water,
Yeah.
the way that we would like. I mean, the surface of the soil is, it's draining perfectly. It's beautiful. But
How far down is the gravel?
so, um, we've worked it so that, well, what happens is that every year with freeze and thaw, the rocks keep coming up. That, the potatoes, we call them potatoes because that's the size they are. We're in an old glacial riverbed.
Yeah.
And so we're just loaded with these, potato-sized rocks that just keep migrating up and
Yeah.
create, probably, is that why, are they just creating too many holes? Or is that part of the problem? Well, even though we've got a pretty good depth of, I don't know, like 8 inches seems to has a lot of organic
And
material.
do you end up having standing water on the surface a lot of the time?
Never.
No. So, I mean,
It's not a drain. It's not that it's infiltrating great, but however, it has gravel underneath and it drains. It just, we still have to water more than it
oh, so
seems
you're saying
like.
it's not holding on to water enough.
It's not holding on to the water because it's got this gravel underneath.
Yeah, well, it may be the gravel, or is it very sandy soil?
Yeah, sand and
Yeah.
gravel, but
So
it's
so
heavily.
if the texture of the soil, and if you end up taking the course, we have a whole section on like what are all the things that influence infiltration. So soil texture does influence. Like if you have very sandy soil, just like at the beach, if you spill your drink, it's gone, right? um, so that could be the gravel underneath could be doing it. And so then you want to think about what can slow that down. And you're right that organic matter is one of the best things. Organic matter meaning dead plant matter, compost, etc. That does help to slow it down. You probably also want to think about, what are some of the more perennial kinds of things that might grow there, because then that's going to be a different dynamic. So, blueberries and asparagus and whatever, right? So
We've got all of that.
yeah.
Fruit trees, blueberries, asparagus, right? We've got all the permaculture stuff, but it's just we're still just watering a heck of a lot more than we want to be, because I'm just guessing and we get our soil tested, lots of organic, they're like
Lots of mulch on the surface.
lots, yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Even with mulch, it's not
Yep.
the
So
problem.
we
It's
all,
not
yeah, we,
evaporating. It's draining.
yeah, we all live in different, wherever you are growing food, there's going to be interesting challenges, and everybody's got different ones. And this is yours, is what it sounds like.
So we just have to build a deeper layer of, I don't know. It just feels like we've got so much organic material in there already. That
yeah, and so I do want to distinguish that the organic matter holds water in one way because it holds it in the dead cells of things. That's actually different than the pores in the soil sponge. So it's the in some ways I know you don't want to do this, but like if you were to grow a meadow there, it would probably actually start building the sponge. Gardens are hard, like annual gardens can be hard to grow a sponge. But we do have a whole bunch of other stuff I want to talk about before. So I'm gonna not stick with this too long. And I'm much more of a big systems person. I'm not a very good crop advisor, et cetera, because that's just not, I haven't spent enough time working long on individual projects. I'm much more work on helping people see the whole thing. So it sounds like you're doing the right things, and you just got to keep going and maybe try a few more things. Janaki?
Just a quick question. I'm curious what the magnification of the first slide is.
I know. He just sent me some new slides, and some of them said 100x. But they were also, and they were kind of similar to that, but it was also saying like 1/20th of the photo was like 10 millimeters. Does that make sense? So it's not, I'm guessing that they may be only 10 times magnified, somewhere between 10 and 100. It's not hugely magnified. And you think about it, you can see the soil particles there. You could see those soil particles if they were in the palm of your hand. They wouldn't look so big and chunky, but it's all stuff that's pretty visible. The fungal hyphae, you probably wouldn't see with your bare eyes. The little threads.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, good question. It's one I've been meaning to ask him, and I will, because I'm actually writing to him just last night and this morning. So. Was there somebody else who had a hand up? thought there was, maybe not. Okay, let's keep going then. All right, so if we have plenty of water at the root zone, that means also that the plants can photosynthesize or grow, right? But also a part of the process of photosynthesizing is transpiring or transpiration. And that is water that is evaporating both inside the plant and at the leaf surface and turning from liquid into vapor. And as it does that, it takes heat to evaporate water. We all know that if you've boiled water and boiled it right down to nothing. And the heat that it takes to evaporate that water or transpire that water is now bound up in the water vapor, and it's no longer sensible heat. It's no longer heat that you can feel in the air around you or on the leaf surface. It's in that reaction. It's in now the water vapor molecule. And so the net effect is that it cools the surface and it also cools the air where the heat has come from, wherever the heat has been taken from for that reaction. And that can only happen if you have water in the soil, right? Because a plant can't transpire the water if it doesn't have water moving through it. So my niece here is feeling cool in the Adirondacks, where that nice, nice, clean, clear spring water is that New Yorkers get to drink. She's feeling cool partly because she's in the shade, but also this beautiful grapevine that is on my grandmother's house is transpiring. So it's actually cooling all of the air around there. I love this study. The Guardian published an article about the study. And if you look at the average cooling effect of these kinds of land management compared to nearby city streets, sorry, this should say nearby, botanical gardens on average 9 degrees cooler, the air in them compared to city streets. And the range, if you look at the range, some of them were 18 degrees cooler just by stepping into the botanical garden. This is very much about transpiration. Wetlands, 8.5 degrees cooler on average, up to 21 degrees cooler. Rain gardens, green walls, street trees, city farms, parks, reservoirs, playgrounds. I find these interesting here, these top ones, because these 4 are much more guaranteed to have water at their root zone. The green walls in England, I don't think they're talking about ivy. They're talking about like on the side of skyscrapers. There's a lot of big office buildings in London now that have green walls, and they have a water source for those plants. And look at that, with a green wall, it could be 32 degrees cooler than nearby city streets. So remember that when we're worrying about like average global temperatures and climate, we're often talking about, you know, on average, like 1.5, 2, 3 degrees. But we can create these oases that absolutely take care of that average here in this spot. And that's part of what we think needs to happen is that we need places for people to be that are cool, even if the globe as a whole is tending to get warmer. But there's also a question that when we look at global warming, we are averaging things, right? And where are we averaging them from? And if everywhere started to do this, would those averages, would that global average change, right? Is it just about the greenhouse effect, or is it about something else? This is just a picture version of the same thing, and there's a little bit more. This is from that article. So this takes us to this other idea that I think is really important, that, and people use different language for this, but Mian, who was a scientist who very sadly passed away recently, but he talked about two legs of climate. There's the greenhouse effect, and then there's the land surface temperature change. And Walter Jena talks about the greenhouse effect as the lid on the pot. It's not just a single layer, it's actually all of the air column, but it's kind of like what's holding the heat in the system. And that's mostly what we've been studying, and mostly what all of climate policy is looking at is, the greenhouse effect. Or do we have, how many greenhouse gases are there, and how much emissions are contributing to greenhouse gases, et cetera. But then there's this whole other thing, because there's also the land surface temperature change. And if the land surface is radiating heat back up, because heat rises, and that's getting captured by those greenhouse gases, then the hotter the surface is, the hotter it's going to be in our pot of our planet, right? So we can help cool the climate by reducing the greenhouse effect, right? By reducing greenhouse gases and taking off the lid, in this metaphor. But we can also do it by turning down the flame and by changing the land surface temperature. So how do we turn down land surface temperature? So there are lots of ways. We're not going to get into it all tonight. I have a 5-week class that's starting February 3rd that I would love to have some of you in. Some of you here have already taken it. But let's look at the cooling effect by just having more plants, because having more plants is doing a bunch of things. It's shading the surface. It's doing the transpiration we were just talking about, which is cooling both the surface and the air. And it's also reducing, it's putting greenhouse gases to work and putting them into living systems through photosynthesis. So it's actually working both on the lid and the flame at the same time. So how do we increase plant growth, right? And how do we have more water at the root zone? By growing the sponge. And by having more plants, we just learned, helps to grow the sponge. So you can increase the height. You can let your lawn or meadow or pasture or garden grow taller. You can reduce bare ground. You can increase the amount of bare ground that's covered with pasture, with lawn, with farms, in between garden rows. You can increase the complexity. So having different leaf shapes, multi-story plants, understory plants, using the sort of 3 sisters or 5 sisters farm planting way of having, the squash leaves are covering the big ground, and the corn is growing tall, and the beans are climbing up the corn. Everybody's finding their own niche where they can capture sunlight just in the right way that they want to. Increasing the diversity of abilities. So there are some grasses that like cool seasons and some that like warm seasons. Some plants prefer humid weather, some plants prefer dry weather. And now we have both of those in the Northeast, right? We have a very long dry season, increasingly long, and we have a very wet season, and we have cold times and we have warm times. So we need plants that can photosynthesize and that can transpire under all of those different conditions. We can increase the duration of green. So the length of time that you let green plants grow, or also the conditions that will make green plants grow longer. So if your lawn goes brown at the end of the season, that means you need to figure out having more deep-rooted dandelions and other things that will help to grow the sponge so that the lawn can stay green all the way through the winter, which it will do under the snow. If you don't cut back plants after bloom, then you're going to have them there growing green all the way through. If you plant a fall cover crop, if you have a farm or a garden, you'll have green for longer in the season. Increasing the water availability at the root zone. So allowing that soil spongy structure to develop, to using no-till, having rain gardens, having uphill ponds and check dams, gullies, swales, all the stuff we were talking about a few minutes ago. And then the big one, though, and this is the big ask and the really hard one these days, is stopping deforestation. So it's not just about planting forests. Planting forests is very important work. The Miyawaki mini forests are amazing. But when we're cutting massive, diverse forests and putting in small, new little monocultures, it's a lot of green that's lost. It's a lot of transpiration that's lost. It's a lot of flood protection that's lost. It's a lot of biodiversity that's lost. It's a lot of carbon that's lost. It's a lot of cloud formation and rain formation that's lost. It's a lot of ability to pull moist air in from the oceans and across the continent that's lost. So most people are still looking at forests just through the carbon lens, just an equation. And so those of us who are starting to understand the role that forests play have really, really important work to do of reaching out to the good people who are doing forest protection and saying there's more reasons to protect your forest than just what we're talking about here. It's not just biodiversity and carbon. There's a lot of other things going on with the water cycle and with cooling, et cetera. And there's some interesting things. I've been corresponding with and had an hour-long conversation with a very interesting hydrologist in British Columbia who showed up kind of as almost like a troll in my LinkedIn criticizing something I didn't. And I just kept going back and forth and finally said, let's have a conversation. And we agreed on everything. It's just, he was trying to make a point that was hard. I wasn't getting it. What he was arguing as devil's advocate of what he thought someone else might argue. And he's done really tremendous work on flooding and forests. And one of the things that he talks about, and that if you take my course, we get into there as well, is like the people say, oh, well, the dark pine, sort of pine forest, et cetera, that's like a darker albedo. It's not, it's not as white as the snow, but that's also protecting the snow from melting. It's shading the snow. And by having a very slow snow melt, that means we have a lot less risk of flooding. So we always have to think bigger and with more different aspects of whatever we're looking at. Okay, I think time-wise, how are we doing, Dorothy? I think we're kind of at our time, right? And we've pretty much covered most of the things. Is Dorothy still with me? Or Nancy?
Yeah, it's almost
it's almost time. Okay, I'll just I'm not going to get into the details of this, but we will get there if we do the course. Just know that one of the phrases that's out there that I think Rob Lewis, who writes on Substack, coined is the living climate. I used to call it the biotic climate, but basically it's this whole idea that the work of other species creates the temperatures of our planet, creates rain, creates weather, creates a perfect climate for life to continue. And that the way that we currently manage living systems is basically destroying life's ability to create the climate that we need. And it's not just about fossil fuels or greenhouse gases. It's really a lot about the flame under the pot. So I wanted to invite you all to this course that's starting next week. If you put the coupon code GREEN in there, you'll get 10% off tonight. And those of you who have taken it in the past, you just shoot me an email if you want to take it again. Many people have taken it 2, 3, or even 4 times because it's very different each time because we have different case studies. I'm giving it for half off for those who've taken it before. And so you can find it just by going to lali.teachable.com. When we're kind of gathered up and taking a little mini break, I can put these links in the chat. And then we have something also, some of you folks here belong to, it's a weekly group that meets called the Land and Leadership Development Community. And we work with living systems frameworks and a lot of case studies. We're working fairly heavily now on looking at how do we rehydrate California, but from a lot of different angles. But we also work on regenerating ourselves, regenerating our communities of practice, and regenerating societies and ecosystems. So 3 different levels. It's a great, small, very intimate group, and we get to know each other's lives well, and work that I love. So invite you all to consider being part of that. And then also feel free to sign up to get emails directly from the Wisdom Underground on Substack. If you just type that in, you'll find it easily. Or to sign up just for general, like once a month or so, updates from landandleadership.org.
Thank you. So is that your last slide, Didi?
Yeah, and I think so. Let's see what's there. Oh, that's my book, The Ecology of Care. That's available, sadly, just on Amazon and Kindle right now. I'm going to work on getting it available in some other places. But I wanted to invite folks who've taken the course or who are in the Land and Leadership Development community, if you want to put something in the chat about your experience with that, or say something, that would be great. Because sometimes people are like, I don't really understand what that is. And I see a couple of hands raised.
Yeah, I was going to say thank you so much. We're getting at time.
Yes,
we
want time for discussion. So.
1 or 2 questions here, and Kate, I think you've asked several, so I'm going to skip for a moment and go over to Evelyn.
Oh, I just have a procedural question. Didi, the interview that you and I did last week, that column has already gone in the newspaper, but my editor gave me permission to cover this talk, and it'll be in the newspaper in a week and a half. Do you want to share information about your upcoming course that publicly?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
So maybe you and I could, in a moment, talk about that.
Sure. Yes. Great. Thank you. And yes, if you haven't seen it, Evelyn wrote a wonderful long article that came out in the Greenfield Recorder. Is that what it's called?
Yes.
Yeah. Thank you so much. I was really thrilled to see that. And we had a really fun conversation the other day. I'm looking forward to more.
So does anyone else other than Kate have a burning question? Or are we time to wrap up?
Oh, I thought we was dear. I was okay. My mistake. I was thinking we'd started at 7. I apologize. I thought we still had a half an hour. I'm happy to stay on, but I don't know if others can. And feel free to transfer the host to me if people want to stay on and talk. In my classes, we have some, especially during the pandemic, people would stay on for like 2 or 3 hours after to talk.
Well, okay, maybe what we can do then is I'll say a few things about our next speaker, and then we'll come back for those who want to
That sounds great. Yeah.
And ask some more questions. So thank you, Didi, for sharing your deep knowledge about water, our climate, soil, and what's driving the water cycle and the whole cooling of our climate, which we're all so concerned about. So you've really set the stage for our second speaker, who's going to be Christine Hatch, and she's a UMass professor of Earth and Climate Sciences, and she's going to ask the question and speak to the question of what can we learn from beavers. So that ties right into what you're talking about here. So she'll talk about the beaver's role not only in smoothing the extremes and floods and droughts and stuff, but also their sociability and how they share their unique habitat that they've created with their neighbors, and that whole complex life that we have here. So she's going to be speaking on Thursday, February 19th. So please mark your calendars. We hope you'll be there. And also, for those of you who are not on Green and Greenfield's e-list. If you didn't receive an announcement directly from us, but came from Didi or some other place, then or our newspaper, then please in the chat, please put your name and your email, and if you want to just send it to myself or Dorothea, not share it with the whole world, you can just be clear about that and do that.
Yeah, you can do that through saying new chat, and then you can pick who you're sending it to. So yeah, or either of you or me or whatever, and we'll share that with each other. Just that's a way of keeping in touch after this, because I think there are a lot of interesting things happening between all of us.
Right. So I want to thank all of you for joining us and coming with us. And if you'd like to stay for another, let's say, 15 minutes or 20 minutes, and continue to chat. Thank you, Didi, for being so generous with your time.
Oh, absolutely. No, I'm this is what I love to do. So, and apologies. That was totally my mistake around the timing. So I kept looking and thinking, well, time's moving at a reasonable pace, but it wasn't because we started at 6:30. So
Okay.
well, you got more of a talk than usually we do.
Absolutely. Thank you also for inviting many people that we're not familiar with and who are not familiar with Grinning Greenfield. So, Kate, go ahead and ask your question now.
So it's just really a question about your group that you mentioned. And you said you mostly are dealing with California.
Well, we're just no, I mean in general we use case studies from whoever's there, but we've been focused on California because I have another project called Can We Rehydrate California? And we were finding we've kind of all heard each other's contexts multiple times now, though we do have new people joining, but it's a small, typically it's like 6 to 8 people per meeting. There's like 25 of us total in the community. And so we decided to take this on of sort of designing the movement of Can We Rehydrate California, because almost everybody has either lived or worked there at some point. And there's a bunch of reasons that even though it's sort of annoying that California gets all the attention, it's also it's something that if we could really do that, a lot of other people would get to understand how that happens. So
yeah, I just wonder if because I'm interested in talking with more people about that, and just wonder if anybody would be interested in how we do that in the Northeast, since as I showed you that watershed map, most of our watersheds are degraded here. And the level in the Quabbin this year.
So here my plan is to do an in-person iteration of that. And I haven't got it all together yet. I'm actually looking for some funding to help with that. And starting to write some grants around that to actually have a series that we get to do in person. I have had a few retreats, but really to bring a group together that wants to work on this locally. So if you're interested in that, send me an email or whatever, and definitely interested. Are you in Greenfield?
I'm in West Hampton.
Yeah,
I'm a little
not too far. Yeah,
I do a lot of work studying the watersheds and looking and trying to educate people about how degraded they are and how we really need to pay attention to this. So I'm messaging you. I'll just put my name in the chat.
Wonderful.
I'll just tell you I'm interested in
rehydrating. I'm gonna put some links in the chat while we're talking here.
Barbara, you've got your hand up here, so why don't you unmute yourself and share your thoughts, your question.
Oh, yes. So there were two things. My first thing was, will the recording be available after the meeting is over to watch later?
Yes, it will be. And if we don't have your email address again, please put it in the chat so that we can send it to you.
And I'm
Okay.
imagining you will put it on your website also?
Yes, it will
Will you
be
put a
on our
link to it?
website
Yeah.
as well. Yep.
Okay, the second thing is that I have been working for 2 or 3 years to renovate or bring back to life a hillside that had glyphosate sprayed on it
Yep.
to get rid of weeds. And we don't have available water, so we've been trying to plant things, by hand, and we have to haul all the water to this hillside. And I think I really, your comments about needing to increase plants that have deep roots to hold the water, that's really very relevant to my situation because we're
Yeah.
just, it's very difficult to get the foliage to increase and spread over the area where soil is very dry and degraded because of the Roundup spraying. So,
Yeah. And I mean, there are different studies on how long the Roundup lasts, but it takes a toll not just on the plants, but on the microbial communities. And so you would want to also be bringing in some good compost, really well-made compost, etc., to help replenish that as well.
yeah, so for every plant that we put in, every plug or every larger plant, we surround it with some good soil or compost or mulch, something to improve the soil there so it has a better chance. So anyway, that's my story and I won't hold you up. Thank you.
Okay. And you can also, you don't have to lug in compost. You can also get compost teas and spray them.
Oh, that's a
So
good idea.
yeah, yeah,
Okay.
Okay,
next
thanks.
up.
Thanks for
great.
the idea.
Yes.
I don't know.
Alvina.
Looks like Susan has her hand up.
Oh, I think Alvina does. I'm watching the hands here. I think Alvina was first. Go ahead, Alvina, and then Susan.
Okay, thank you. This is for the Greeting Greenfield. I was wondering if your future talks will also be on Zoom because they sound very interesting.
They're not, we like to have them in person, but we do always videotape them. And so they will always be available in that way.
Okay, so they'll be
On our
available
web-
on your
Yeah,
website then.
and on our website, we have a section about the nature pollinator sort of world, and under the learning thing, there's a list of the talks and things that we did last year and the year before, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. So there's a library
Okay.
we've been trying to pull
Well,
together.
thank you very much for having this and having Dee Dee speak to you.
Well,
Have
thank
a good
you
evening.
for coming.
Thanks, so.
Okay.
Susan.
Thanks. I can't get my camera to work, so
Oh,
excuse
that's
the
okay.
static. Working on 7 acres, restoring some forest land, and the big challenge for me, in addition to so many invasive plants, are the Asian jumping worms, which have changed the soil. And I'm wondering if you have any research or remedies to help through that.
I wish I did. I just spoke in Brattleboro about 10 days ago, and there was a lot of conversation about the Asian jumping worms. I am very hopeful that the turkeys will figure out, a couple generations down of turkeys will figure out that they are the perfect food for them because turkeys are kind of scratchivores on the forest floor. I think they're not tuned in right now to things that move that fast. But I also heard from someone in Brattleboro that they were working in 2 different systems, and one was like a very monoculture kind of conventional, and there were a lot of worms there, but that another place that they were working, maybe they were a landscaper or something, that was very diverse, had very few worms, even though they were very in the same general area. So I think there's a clue there that when we have that kind of plant diversity, we're inviting in microbial diversity and insect diversity and small mammal diversity that are probably combined help to balance things out. If you've seen the movie The Biggest Little Farm, It's a great example of how when you put enough diversity in a system, it tends to sort things out. Same thing is true with John Todd, Living Machines. You add all of the sort of components of a pond, and it will take care of horrible chemicals from factories or raw sewage or whatever. Life kind of knows how to work if the whole workforce is together. So that's all I know for now. Someone else said that there was some poison that they'd put out that worked, but it's, then you're probably causing more problems down the line. So, and unexpected ones.
So thank you. Thank you for sharing my despair.
Yes. They're also just kind of horrible. I mean, I like snakes, but
Adelaide?
Adelaide, yeah.
Hi, yeah, I was curious to hear about how, if at all, this idea of the soil sponge has been percolating into the mainstream, whether that's through, informing legislation or more mainstream farming practices through, university extensions or anything like that.
I actually love that question because it's a really interesting question, and it's sort of a funny answer. So the term the soil sponge or the term sponge is appearing more and more. Many people are using it in a way that isn't the way that I mean it. And that's okay, but it's a little bit frustrating sometimes because people are using it in a very broad sense of the word, of like, if a landscape slows water, then it's a sponge, right? But when like that first slide I showed you, when I talk about the soil sponge, I'm literally talking about something that grows underground that is structural. I don't mean it as a metaphor for the whole landscape. That is also true, but it sort of is watering down what I mean when I say soil sponge. And I didn't come up with the term soil sponge. I came up with that bread and flour thing, and I was doing it at a conference, a Bio for Climate conference on water. My students were actually doing it. And Walter Jena was speaking there, and he was using the term soil carbon sponge. And afterwards, we raced up to each other and said, hey, that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm showing. I've dropped the word carbon because people started hearing it as soil that's sponging up carbon, which is true, but it's not actually the point of what I'm making of that is about water. And it's actually what Walter also meant it in terms of water. He had the carbon in the middle because it is, that life is carbon in there, right? The Sponge City initiative, Kang Jianlu's initiative in China, sprung up around the same time that Walter and I started using this term more widely, and having, he and I toured speaking together around North America for a number of years. That I think that initiative is phenomenal enough, and I'm just devastated that he died last year. That I'm like cool with using it in that way because it's really talking about a sponge city. It's very clear that it's not the soil sponge, it's the sponge city. And I think his work includes the soil sponge. We were just starting to email each other when he died, so I never actually got to meet him or talk to him. But so in terms of policy, I think in policy, it's mostly what you'll see is soil health as a term. And we're now increasingly, like there's in the US, new funds available around regenerative agriculture. Sometimes the word sponge will pop up as people are writing about why soil health is important or why regenerative agriculture is important. That's new that term is in there. But there was a period where there were a lot of bills around soil health, around regenerative agriculture, also around soil carbon, which is not the same thing as the soil sponge, though they often go together. But you can dump a bunch of biochar in the soil and have much higher carbon levels, or, sample next to a manure pit and have high carbon levels, and it's not sponge structure. So, yeah, I think there's a lot happening. A lot of people have seen a presentation of mine in a lot of different places. A lot of people have seen the bread and flour. It's happening. I mean, I have people sending me videos from remote villages in India of people doing this that I've never met and probably never will. So people are getting this as both as a metaphor and a reality, but there's also a lot of misunderstandings. That's a long answer because I like your question. So. Did that get at what you were asking, Adelie?
Yeah, thank you. That was great.
Okay.
Thanks.
Christina?
Thank you. Thank you, Didi. That was wonderful. My question is, you mentioned a lot about leaving the mulch and the plants to kind of do their thing. What is the thinking around animals who live underground? So I live in a rainforest. We have voles, moles, gophers. So it's just a whole community. Do they help with the health of the soil? And I know a lot of people trap them and poison them and things like that, but
no, that's also I really love that question too. And typically when I'm doing a sort of a longer class on that first part that we just did, I would talk about that is one of the things that as we grow it, so we can kind of grow it on this micro level, and there's the micro pores and then the bigger pores and then there's the tunnels that, not just plant roots, but also earthworms and all kinds of little creepy crawlies, some of them that are smaller than you can see, and some of them that are snakes and gophers and whatever. So they're all contributing to kind of a macro sponge. And some of those holes are really important. Not only are they, they can become spaces where other animals live later. So they can really contribute to biodiversity and the health of systems. And some animals lay their eggs in tunnels that someone else made, et cetera. But if you're in a place that has a crusted over surface and that has, very dry soils and kind of droughty or desert-like conditions, when you get a big rain, those holes of all of those small mammals and reptiles, et cetera, are what primes the system to accept water. It's the first place that the water can enter. And if you've ever let you've gone away on vacation for a month and you come back and your kitchen sponge is dry, it doesn't absorb water when it's dry, right? And so those animal tunnels and burrows, et cetera, are really critical to wet the sponge so that it can then soak up water the way that a sponge really does.
okay.
So yes, really, really
Be
important.
nice to those guys.
Yeah.
Okay.
And they are also the food source for so many other animals, and they are also a source of nutrients, of manure and whatever, right? And they're moving they're moving things underground, and we think about dung beetles doing that, but many animals are doing that with their own dung.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Heather?
I actually just wanted to thank you because I now understand something about soil health that I really could not intellectually get. And I'm a person who understands bone structure and who understands sponge when I'm baking a cake.
Mm-hmm.
And I know when I've hit it right.
Yeah.
And so now it's a matter of knowing what I'm feeling in my hands in the places where that I care for. And then it helps me understand what everybody else is saying. And for a lot of people who don't know this, bones are actually a sponge. Like your bones in your body are a sponge. So that also helps me understand where bigger spaces might be helpful.
Let's stay with the bone
spaces.
thing for a minute, because I deal with osteoporosis myself, and so I think a lot about bones. And one of the things that I have learned from my dentist actually is that calcium is only one aspect of bone, and it's the sort of more brittle aspect, right? And it's collagen is what a lot of bones, especially like our teeth, are made of collagen. And collagen gives it the resilience and the flexibility. So when we think about like strengthening bones, it's not just about the rigid structure, which is part of it, because we do want to be able to stand up straight, but it's also about the bouncy, gummy structure.
The collagen piece, and what a lot of people also don't know is that absorbing actual fluid, and particularly water, is a lot slower than you'd think. Like our bodies react the way sponges do. Your fascial tissue and your bones actually have to be relatively hydrated to accept more. So you can be drinking a lot of water and still be fundamentally dehydrated.
And what is it that helps to keep the true hydration?
I don't know enough about this yet, but I do know that one of the things that is helpful can be the electrolyte balance in a fluid you're drinking. But also, if you're just drinking water, literally resting. You know how if you take a sponge, you try to get it wet and then you try to use it, it's even worse than if you just let it sit there a minute and absorb what it can absorb. So to have your fascial tissue rehydrate, you want to rest. And the similar thing would happen with bones. So you want to be sure that all your tissues that are softer are like your muscles and your fascia are well hydrated. And then you want to drink a small amount of something with electrolyte before you go to sleep, because that's a time when bone could rehydrate. And that's all I know about it. And it's way more complicated than that.
So those kind of like veggie, like smoothies and things like that would be electrolyte rich. Yeah.
Yes. And knowing like that it's a balance between magnesium and calcium. And there's one of the reasons mushrooms are great is there's selenium. That's part of the process.
Sorry, one of the reasons that what?
A soil sponge.
Oh, we missed a little bit.
Selenium, like mushrooms.
Literally
physically eating mushrooms. They have selenium in them. So it is really possible to understand both your body and the body of the planet and the hydration needs as like two uses of the same template.
Fascinating. The other thing, sorry, we're going off into the ecology of care topic here for a minute, but to those who are listening.
But
it's important. It actually is important.
Having never heard your presentation or soil sponge, this is my reaction.
That's great. No, it's awesome. And I'm actually planning to get more back into that. I got so excited about soil right after I wrote that book that I never really taught anything from the book other than directly to my patients. So I do have some courses coming up on sort of personal resilience. But I was going to say about mushrooms that mushrooms are one of the only other species that can absorb vitamin D from sunlight. So all of these cultures that dry mushrooms in sun-dried mushrooms, I mean, the amount of vitamin D that is absorbed there is tremendous in a mushroom. And if you follow the work of Weston Price, he's always looking at like cod liver oil and this and that. And I don't think he looked at the mushroom piece, but that's clearly one of the places where traditional cultures were getting their vitamin D in the winter. So,
well, and mushrooms just taste better than cod liver oil. I mean, some of it is just what am I willing to do, right?
No kidding, yeah.
But it's really powerful to understand. Like there are a lot of different religions that talk about human beings coming from the soil and that we are like soil and we're going to go back there. They're not wrong, because the way that we absorb heat and the way that we absorb water in the way that we hydrate ourselves is not different than the way the planet hydrates itself. We just don't understand something that big without looking more carefully.
Yep, we are walking sponges.
So thank you for listening. I'm sorry.
Thank you, Heather. Oh,
going
no,
off
no,
at the
I
mouth.
was apologizing because I could go off on the health track myself for a long time. So.
Right.
Okay.
And I don't have a lab. When I'm out in my garden, when I'm out in the woods, I don't have a lab. So what I need to do is use the same things I use to get the sponge right in the bread and the cake.
And they talk about healthy soil being like chocolate cake. That
Right.
is the description of it. Yeah.
And a lot of people who don't bake don't know that there's differences in how your cake came out.
Yep.
But that's so helpful. Like I'm like moving my hands because I know there's a nice texture when you put it in the oven and that will produce a nice sponge. So I just
Yep.
need to know what that is in my garden.
Absolutely. Yeah. Then one of the best things to do is just get out there and actually feel and even smell the soil. And to start comparing things from one place to another and see where is
Yeah.
it healthy and where isn't it and what's going on the surface. That seems
And
like
it's
it's changing.
not going to feel the same where I grew up in Montana as it is where I live in Massachusetts. It's not necessarily going to feel the
Right.
same to get the same long term or like longer than the 5 minutes I'm there results.
Yeah. Denise says AI has been using the soil sponge similar to you, unless you're saying Al. But so if AI is using the soil sponge term soil sponge similarly to me, it's because it's pulling from my material. So
Well,
that's the funny
in
thing
that
with it.
case, we can be happy with AI, but you
Yeah,
just
I mean,
never know.
I'm pretty much the only one using that term in writing on the internet. So
And
uh,
just keep writing it.
yeah.
Okay, well, does anyone else have a question? I don't see any more raised hands. So, thank you,
Yeah. What
Didi.
a wonderful group.
Thank you
Yeah.
so much. And it's been fascinating. And you put a lot of things in front of us and ways of finding out a lot more from your courses and elsewhere. So
Yes, and I do hope to come down so I can meet some of you in person.
that would be
Maybe when it warms up just a bit. And when is the beaver one happening? We'll just give one more plug for that.
that's the February 19.
February 19th.
Yep. What can we
Okay,
learn from beavers?
wonderful.
Yeah. So thank you so much.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Have a good night. Feel free to be in touch with any questions.
Thank you.
I'll throw my email in the chat here. Just sorry. Do
Thank
that
you very
for
much. Good night. Thank you.